Hello, my name is Dean Contover. This is the Current Buzz. This is a new season for us, but thank you for watching again. Today we have John Carson. He's the chairperson of the Moses Greeley Parker Lectures. So we welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
And this is the 241st interview that I've had.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a lot of people.
I feel honored.
I won't go into to tell you who the first one is. I'll tell you after the show.
Okay.
But you know, it's a new season, and we're going to have a lot of interesting people. I'm already booked for November, so keep on watching. And thank you for your support. And if you have any ideas, call Chimsatella Media and get in contact with me if you have any interest in people we might interview or you want us to interview. We'd appreciate that. Any veterans that you want us to interview, uncles, sisters, brothers, whatever, we'll interview them too. So thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it very much. I mean, the Moses Greeley Parker Lectures. When did you become chairman and what is it?
Sure. Well, I became chairman in a somewhat unfortunate way in that the former chairman was Jock Pearson, a well-known attorney in Lowell, and he had been chairman for, gosh, probably 20 years, and unfortunately he passed away last year. And I've been on the board of trustees of the lecture series for about 10 years now, and so I was asked to take over his chairmanship last year after Jock's death. So that's how I became chairman. As far as the lecture series, this is a free lecture series that is offered in the city of Lowell at various locations. And the idea is to provide education as well as entertainment to people in the greater Lowell area.
Right. It could be from Boston. It's not only greater Lowell. I mean, people can come because it's free.
Absolutely.
And it's been free since 1917 when it was established.
That's correct.
Right.
As part of Moses Greeley Parker's will, he donated a certain amount of money, actually AT&T stock, and indicated that one of the requirements was, first of all, that the city of Lowell provide a free site for the lectures, and second, that we, the trustees, not charge anyone for attending these lectures.
Wow. So that's in his will.
Exactly.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. And how many people do you get to these lectures roughly? I mean, it varies on the issue and what's going on in the world, or?
All of the above.
All of the above.
Sometimes it's as few as 15 or 20 people. A typical size would be between 30 and 50. But we've had some of these, for example, the Tamburitsons from Duquesne University, which is an entertainment group. We typically do that once or twice, every couple of years at the Lowell High School Auditorium, and we'll get close to 1,000 people.
Oh, wow.
1,000 people.
Interesting. For free?
For free,
Well,
absolutely.
I have to bring that up.
It's for free.
So if you're new to the city of Lowell or greater Lowell, Merrimack Valley, if you see the brochure, and I can show you the brochure, this is the brochure. Every year they come out with a brochure. Right. So this is, this year, my favorite color, green. So if you see the brochure, pick it up, put it in your calendar, in your phone, or the calendar book if you still use a book, and definitely go to one or many of these shows. They're very interesting.
We try to provide quite a wide range of topics and speakers so that we will attract a wide audience.
Right, right. So what's the mission? Is it to just have people lecture, or is it education? Is it a combination of both? Or?
It's a combination of both. Mr. Parker, in his will, was very specific as to some of the topics that he thought that we should have lectures on. One was the economy, and he was very specific. He wanted people in the greater Lowell area to be educated basically how to live within their means. That's in part of his will.
I'm trying to instill that in my daughter, but
okay.
It's not working.
He also indicated that he wanted lectures in the area of medicine and hygiene so that people would know how to stay healthy and live a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
He wanted lectures in terms of education, and he wasn't more specific than that. And finally, he wanted lectures on civil government, particularly the Constitution. And so educating people in terms of responsibilities as a citizen. But then in his will, he stated that if the trustees felt important or necessary to do lectures on other topics, we were free to do so.
Like sports.
Like sports,
Yeah,
as an
right.
example.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Right.
So who is Dr. Moses Greeley Parker? Who is he? You sent me the bio, and I did read the bio. He was a surgeon during the Civil War, which perked my interest.
Sure.
But why don't you go through the steps and?
Sure. Well, Dr. Parker was a resident of Lowell, grew up in Lowell. As you indicated, he went to Harvard Medical School. He was a surgeon during the Civil War. In fact, he was responsible for building and then operating what at the time was the largest military hospital in the world. I think there were something like 4,000 beds, and that was his responsibility.
Wow.
After the war, he came back to Lowell and was a practicing ophthalmologist. He was very involved in some of the early work at St. John's Hospital, which is now part of Lowell General Hospital. He was not only an excellent surgeon, excellent medical doctor, but he was an interesting individual who had a lot of other interests. He liked to tinker with things. And one day in, I believe it was 1877, there was a young man who came to Lowell from Boston University by the name of Alexander Graham Bell.
Never heard of him.
And Mr. Bell gave a lecture at a site in Lowell.
Do we know where that site was or no?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it's probably in the Chronicles or someplace.
Yeah.
But he gave a lecture in Lowell in which this was shortly after he'd filed his patent for the telephone. And so during that lecture, he demonstrated a telephone call between Boston and Lowell. They played, someone in Boston played on the organ, and you could hear that sound here in the city of Lowell. And so Dr. Parker became intrigued by this invention. He could see a lot of potential for it. In fact, he set up, not long after that, a telephone connection. It was a wooden telephone, believe it or not, between his home and his office in Lowell. And so Dr. Parker maintained his connection with Mr. Bell and eventually started buying AT&T stock and also New England Telephone stock. And at one time, I believe it was around 1880, 88, 1890, he was the largest individual shareholder in AT&T.
Wow.
So he became quite wealthy as a result of that investment. And it was not only as an investor, but as I said, he was a tinkerer. He enjoyed exploring different things beyond medicine. And one of the things that he realized was at the time, telephone connections were made from one phone to another using an operator, and the person doing the call would indicate the name of the person they wanted to call. And Dr. Parker recognized that this was quite limiting, that the best operator could remember maybe 700 names and how to connect to that individual. A typical operator maybe 300 or 400. But if that operator happened to be out ill one day, then the connection couldn't be made. And so he came up with the idea of, how about a telephone number? How about a directory that instead of having names, have phone numbers for individuals? And so we can thank the telephone directory and the numbers associated with telephone calling to Dr. Parker.
Interesting. So in other words, the telephone number that I have today, right, 978-251, I won't go into detail, is because of
Dr. Parker. Exactly.
So I can remember when Lowell had 5 digits. Remember those days?
Absolutely.
It was 5 numbers that you called,
right,
and that was it, and you got your party. and they had a party line, if I remember, years ago, so where people could listen to you if you were on the party line. That was the cheap way to get a phone.
Right.
So the telephone has evolved, and the telephone numbers have evolved.
Right.
So he decided to come up with this numerical number.
Right.
I think it was 1972 they switched over to instead of 5 to what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7
Right.
numbers, and then later they came out with
the area
code.
codes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, I think it was 1972, and everybody was upset and they didn't want to switch from their 5 numbers, etc. That's funny.
Right.
So did he come out with a directory? How did that evolve?
I don't know exactly all the things that he did personally, but I know that one of the things that the first directory was published by the Courier Citizen Corporation, which is in Lowell.
Right.
And so he had some connection there. I don't know if he had a financial interest or...
But they did directories for the whole country for years.
Exactly, right. So
The
there's
yellow
that connection
pages
as well.
and so forth, yeah.
Right.
Are they still doing that? Is Courier still around?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'll find out. Maybe I'll have them come in and get that clarified.
Sure.
So the telephone number that we know came from Lowell
Exactly.
person who invented it.
Right.
Got an idea.
And you know, because of Dr. Parker's investment in AT&T, and he also invested in New England Telephone and Telegraph Company, he became a very wealthy individual.
I'm sure in those days, yeah. Right.
Exactly. And
not like the Fords or anything like that.
No,
Vanderbilt. No.
but he was in those days quite wealthy.
Right.
And he never married, and so he never had any offspring.
Oh.
And so when he died, he bequeathed his estate primarily to his sister, a woman by the name of Mary Morrison, and to his nephew, a gentleman by the name of Theodore Edson Parker. And so they were the primary beneficiaries of his estate. As I said, in his will, he indicated that a certain number of shares, I think it was 500 shares of AT&T stock, be used to establish the lecture series, which I'm chairman of.
Right.
But he had a lot of other money in addition to that. And so just to give you some indication of some of the other aspects of Dr. Parker's life and his legacy, his sister, Mary Morrison, I believe it was in the 1920s, donated a building and parcel of land and contents to the town of Dracut. And then that became the Dracut Library, which was named in Moses Greeley Parker's,
that's good. I'm glad you mentioned
Parker's
that.
name.
Yeah, right.
I think the building at the time was, and the land was about a $25 million donation to the town of Lowell, town of Dracut.
Right.
And it's still
He was born in Dracut.
He was born in Dracut, right, but lived in Lowell.
Right.
And so that's another aspect of his philanthropy. His nephew, Theodore Edson Parker, when he died, he set up a foundation, which is still viable today. It's in the city of Lowell, called the Theodore Edson Parker Foundation. And that's a very wealthy foundation. They give over $1 million a year. They donate to various public interest in Lowell. Lowell Community Health Center, for example, is one of the beneficiaries. So all of this follows from Dr. Parker and the work that he did. And
Interesting. Interesting. Who's on the board, and how do you pick who in the board comes up with the idea to have this particular person?
Okay. There are 3 trustees. In addition to myself, there's Bill Samaras, who is currently the mayor of Lowell. He was a headmaster at Lowell High School for many years. And also Brian Martin. Brian was also a headmaster at Lowell High.
Right.
He was city manager for a time. So the 3 of us are the trustees. We have and we're all unpaid. We have a paid executive secretary, Paul Lappin. And so that constitutes basically the organization. As far as who comes up with ideas, we have a number of different ways. Certainly the 3 of us as trustees, as well as Paul Lappin, we have ideas that we kick around at our meetings. Paul himself, being a paid employee, spends a lot of time looking for various speakers that might be out there. But in addition to that, we have an advisory committee which consists of the Chancellor of the University of Lowell, UMass Lowell, Jackie Maloney, the head of the Lowell National Historic Park, and the head of the Pollard Library, as well as either the city manager or the mayor. And so we meet once a year and again exchange ideas for possible lecture topics. And beyond that, we're looking for ideas. So if you, Dean, have some ideas,
I do.
or
I do.
if,
I always have ideas.
Sure. Or if people that are watching this have some ideas, please get in contact with us. You can contact me directly here in town. My phone number is in the phone book. Or you can go on our website, which is www.parkerlectures, all one word with an S at the end, .com, and suggest ideas. And we're always looking for.
Who would you suggest that you would like to have as a lecturer?
Oh my goodness. We've had many excellent ones over the years. One we're very much interested in trying to make happen is Professor John Wooding at UMass Lowell has an idea of setting up Lowell as a UNESCO City of Learning. This would be the first one in North America.
Wow.
And he has contacts with individuals in Cork, Ireland, where they already have a City of Learning, UNESCO City of Learning established. And so Bill Samaras has good contacts with Professor Wooding, and between them, we're attempting to arrange to have someone from the city of Cork come and give a talk and hopefully spur interest in setting up a UNESCO City of Learning. Can you get in
contact with him? I could have him on the show?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Sure.
That's great. Questions. Who pays? How much do you pay? I don't want to say specifically who gets paid what.
Sure. Okay. So as I said, in Dr. Parker's will, he dictated that the City of Lowell must provide a free location, and that the lectures themselves must be free to the public, but that the trustees were allowed to pay to get good lecturers in the series. So we have a budget. It's basically the income from the investment of the funds of Dr. Parker's estate, and so we have a budget of between $25,000 and $30,000 on an annual basis that we use primarily to pay for our lectures. And that could include travel expenses if it's someone from out of town.
And even overnight stay at the hotel?
There's a limit, but we try to keep, obviously, we've got a lot of ways to spend that money, so we try to spend it frugally, but depending on the speaker and how important we think it's going to be, how well attended, we have some flexibility in terms of what we pay.
Oh, interesting. Another thing I'd like to talk about, you're involved in John Carson's road race, and I just want to tell people how I remember your son. And I live in the North Chelmsford area, and every day the train goes by towards Air in North Chelmsford. They take that, instead of going north up to Nashua, it switches off in North Chelmsford. And the train blows its horn 3 times at this particular location. And a lot of people may not have forgotten this because this happened in 1987. Every time I hear that 3 blast, I think of your son and explain what happened and what you
Well, thank you, Dean. I appreciate that. Yes.
Yeah.
So my son was an athlete. He was a long-distance runner at Chelmsford High. He just
a student. Let's not forget.
Well, he was a good he was a good student. He was also a Boy Scout,
Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout.
Okay.
So he enjoyed running, and particularly distance running. So he ran cross country, he ran winter track, he ran spring track, and so in his junior year, So he was 16 and then became 17 in October of that year. In his junior year, he was actually, as a junior, he was chosen as a co-captain of his cross-country team, which is rather unusual. Mostly it's a senior.
Right.
But he was an excellent runner. He set a number of school records. He was undefeated in the Merrimack Valley Conference in terms of running. He ran some races outside of New England, one in New York, the Manhattan Invitational, where he ran a very excellent time. And so in December 30th to be exact, 1987, he was out on a routine run, practice run with his teammates. And they had run this course for many years, many times.
Right.
And it was a bitterly cold day. And so he and his teammates were all bundled up against the weather. And Johnny, being sort of the go-getter that he was out at the front of the pack. And so they ran this route up through North Chelmsford, which crossed a railroad track. And he was, as I said, at the front of the pack, and he was bundled against the weather such that he apparently didn't hear the train coming, and so he was killed instantly in front of all of his teammates and his coach. And needless to say, it was a tragic event that no parent can prepare for. But my wife and I, as well as our daughter Lori, have done our best to take and make something positive out of this tragic event. And so, among other things, we give a scholarship at Chelmsford High School to a graduating senior each year. And to help fund that scholarship, we have the 4th of July John Carson Memorial Road Race.
Right.
And so part of the funds that fund the scholarship come from the proceeds of that, which Bob Sullivan from Sullivan Farms Ice Cream up in Tingsboro is the race director. He has been since day one, and it's just a great event for the community and especially for my wife and daughter and I, just to have our son's name looked at in a very positive way and something positive done to perpetuate his memory.
Yeah. And when I hear those whistles, those 3 whistles, I still remember your son. And I never met him, but I know what that means.
Yes.
And it means a lot to me, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. And I
appreciate it.
I hope you don't mind me mentioning
Not at all.
it to you.
We like to keep his memory alive.
Yeah,
and,
right. It should be. So the road race, anybody could run the road race. You got people from out of state coming to run this race.
Absolutely. It's only 2 miles, so it's the type of race that anyone, as you say, anyone can run or walk, as I'm doing more these days than running. But
I can walk it, 2 miles. Yeah.
We get some really world-class runners that run it because, among other things, not only is it a great race, it's much like a mini Boston Marathon with people on both sides of the roadway cheering you on. But beyond that, financially, it can be very rewarding. The first place male and first place female each get $300. And in addition to that, if you break the course record, either male or female, you get $1,000.
Oh, wow.
So we had, not this year, but the previous year, we had a young man and turned out to be his girlfriend, both excellent runners who ran and both set a course record.
Wow,
so
good for them.
For a 2-mile run, they did pretty well. And as I said, being a short distance, excellent runners like that, they can run another race in the afternoon and maybe earn some more money.
Dr. Carson, we have less than 1 minute. What do you want to say in regards to Morris Greeley Parker lectures, real quick?
Well, I just feel very honored, Dean, to be chairman of this organization. It's something that has been around now for over 100 years. I think we've done a lot of good in terms of helping to educate people in the greater Lowell area. And we look forward to another 100 years. And any ideas people have, we're looking forward to them.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it very much for your story, especially about your son.